Now I'm just going to finish with the last question which is on the page. Number 5, we have to find the equation of each of these lines. Okay, so we'll start with line A. Now before we do that, actually, the first thing to notice is that this set of axes actually has different scales for each axis. The x-axis is going across 2 squares for every 1, and the y-axis is only going up 1 square for every 1. Okay, and a lot of you made the mistake on the first algebra test we did of not noticing that and getting the wrong value for your gradient. Now, if we're going to write down the equation of a line, it's easiest if we use this method here, writing it down in this form, y equals mx plus c. You're going to see this a lot. Now, m stands for the gradient, or the steepness. Okay, and we'll talk about how you work that out in a second. And c, in this case, stands for the y-intercept, the point where the line intercepts the y-axis. I'm just going to write down y-int to save me time. Okay, now how do we work out the gradient? Well, to find the gradient of a line, we need to find how far it goes across and how far it goes up. And when we have those two things, we divide its change in the y direction, it's how far it goes up, by its how far it went across. Okay, so I'll just write that down over here. Gradient. In fact, rather than writing gradient, I'll just put m. So we'll call the y distance the y step, and we'll call the x distance the x step. Okay, so let's start with line A. Its y-intercept is 0. It's going through the y-axis at 0. So it's going to be y equals something x plus 0. Now obviously I'm not going to write that plus 0 because it wouldn't affect the equation. So all I'm looking for is the gradient on this one. So find the point where it goes through 2 corners of a square. That will make this easiest. Okay, there and there's fine. Draw yourself a triangle. Okay, now we've gone 1 across there, 1 number across, from 1 to 2, and we've gone 1 number up, again from 1 to 2 on the y-axis. So the y step is 1 and the x step is 1. If we do 1 divided by 1, that would give us 1. So this is y equals 1x, but I wouldn't write that, we would just write y equals x. Okay, on to line B. Its y-intercept is 1, so I know the equation is y equals something x plus 1. Now we need to find its gradient. Find the point where it goes through the corner of 2 squares again. Now it goes through the corner of a lot of squares, this one, and you might think this is the line y equals x because it goes up perfectly diagonally, but the fact that these two axes are different scales changes that. So I'm going to go for this point here and this point here. Okay, draw yourself in a triangle again. Now the x step there that took us from 1 on the x-axis to 2 in that distance is 1, and the y step that took us from 3 to 5 is 2. Okay, so the gradient, or m, is 2 divided by 1, which is 2. So the equation of this line is y equals 2x plus 1. And the last one, I can already see that this one's going down as we go from left to right rather than up like the other two lines. So this one actually has a negative gradient. So it's going to be y equals negative some number of x's plus something, or minus something. Okay, so well, let's have a look at the y-intercept. The y-intercept here is negative 1.5. So I'll just leave a gap for the gradient. Minus 1.5. Okay, you can add on negative 1.5, but the overall effect is that you're taking away 1.5. Now let's find the gradient. Find the corner of 2 squares that it passes through. There's one. And there's one. Okay, draw in a triangle. Now I like to go across first. So go to 1 there, and this time this graph's gone down rather than up like the other two, which is another indication that it's got a negative gradient. So it's gone from negative 1 to 1 in the x direction, which is of course a distance of 2, and it's gone from 0 to negative 3, which I'm going to write as a distance of negative 3. It's gone downwards. Okay, and the gradient is the y step divided by the x step, so negative 3 divided by 2. negative 3 divided by 2, you could write that as negative 1.5. Okay, or you could just leave it as a fraction in fraction form, and if one of those numbers is negative, then the whole fraction is negative. Okay, because I've put the y-intercept as a decimal, I'm going to put the gradient as a decimal. Okay, but either is correct.